think we. Hello and welcome to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines, a Tuesday edition. And if you're used to following the show, my name is Pat Burnham, and I am joined by Nick Carlisle, a recruiting writer for the Osceola, and the man, the myth, the legend himself, Charles Fishvine from South Florida. Guys, how's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay today, Pat. You and I are on the same wavelength as usual. Feeling a little fuzzy today. A little fuzzy. I don't know. Maybe it's the change in weather that's getting us. It's getting a little bit colder outside.
Yeah, well, right now Murphy's not a fan of us doing the show. She's barking at me. Yeah, I'm the same way. Listen, I just got through writing Takeaway Tuesday, which is my weekly column, and I had to take an hour-long trip to the gym to clear my head to try to make. I had writer's cramp. I might have talker's cramp after last night's edition of Seminole Sidelines. But listen, every Tuesday we go over recruiting, what's going on in the latest on the recruiting front, and got some updates, not a ton, but we do have some. And I'll start with the two that I have, and of course, I think we all have one common one. But I was able to communicate with defensive end prospect Toby Hostrup from Texas. And he did confirm with me this morning that he will be taking his official visit to Florida State next weekend, and same weekend that Florida State plays North Carolina at home. So he has visited BC, Boston College this past weekend, Missouri the weekend before that. And Nick, I think you said possibly LSU is in that plan.
LSU was his first official visit. I can't remember exactly the week that he went, but that was the first one that he went to a couple weeks ago, at least a month. I know that things obviously there's a lot that's happened since then, but the reception originally to that visit is that LSU did a really good job. They set the tone for sure, but of course that's his first. He's a kid that, strangely enough, just was not involved with college football at all prior to him exploding up on the recruiting trail. So it's kind of just a fresh new experience. So he's visited a couple of more places. So LSU firmly in the mix there, but obviously he's going to take a couple of more visits, and Florida State is not the only one that's going to get him before signing day.
Yeah, I think he's mentioned Texas A&M has really gotten on him hard. And if you're not familiar with who Toby is, I believe he is from Texas. He's a track guy. He's legitimately fast, and he is a freakish looking athlete when you watch his huddle tape. And I think he's a first year football player. I don't think he played last year, Nick, if I'm thinking correctly.
No, but he did. It's not his first time putting on pads. I think he played in the 7th grade for just a little while, and then he focused purely on track. But freakish is I feel like a freak athlete is kind of the buzzword that we like to use sometimes for some kids. But if you ever take a look at this kid and the way that he's built up, he is freakishly fast and he's freakishly built. So freak athlete he's the dictionary definition for sure.
Yeah, listen, he's going to just his size, his speed, his athleticism. As you said, it's just far from over with him, and he's probably one of those rare kids that might extend his recruiting until February with the original National Signing Day. Most of the kids will sign on December 4th, as we well know. And then probably the other update that I have of any real value right now is Javion Hilson, who was committed to Florida State, came out yesterday morning and has set his commitment timeline, which is, I think, it's not a commitment timeline unless he chooses not to sign on December 4th, which he can do. But he is set to announce his commitment on December 4th, which is the early national signing date. And the teams that he mentioned in the article that our site Rivals did with him, not us, but the Rivals national site, were Texas A&M, and strangely enough, Syracuse. And then, of course, he did mention that Alabama and Florida State were still involved, the one thing that stands out to me, and he also said he's open to listening to other suitors. So it sounds like the kid's really enjoying the recruiting process, which you would think at this point he would be over it. But he right now plans to be at the Texas A&M Texas game on November 30th. So I think that makes his picture a little clearer as to what direction he is moving in. And I think he's going to decide between the Longhorns and the Aggies. I think Florida State is out of it, but in the NIL era, anything is possible because he can get a big enough bag that changes his mind from somebody else, Florida State or otherwise. And then, of course, Trayshawn Gelsey, the wide receiver, is committed to Florida. Now, this is more tentative, guys. I did read this. He has not firmly locked his official visit to Florida State in for November the 30th. They are in the process of working out the logistics, but certainly with where Florida State is on the wide receiver front, they could certainly use another one after you lost McCutcheon to Texas. And, listen, I know, Fish, you feel pretty good about Wiley, don't you, C.J. Wiley?
Yeah, I think that Wiley will stick for now. I don't, from my understanding, Georgia is still recruiting other guys with the idea that he's not coming. So I think FSU has a legit shot at keeping him. He has a great shot to come in and play right away. From what I've been told, he likes what he saw from Keon Coleman last year and Johnny Wilson and what he can do in Florida State's offense. So Florida State, just has to hold on. I mean, it's whether they had a good season or not, it was going to always be tough to hold on to him. But the kid does like Florida State a lot.
Yeah. I know that at one time you and I were talking, Georgia seemed to be really keying in on him, and I'm sure they're obviously still recruiting him, but I don't know. It seems like maybe Florida State's need for Wiley is greater than Georgia's need for Wiley, is about the best way that I can put it.
Well, they certainly have more wide receiver commits than Florida State does. I think they have 3. They've got Blackshear, they've got Taylor, and then they've got his name starts with an R. I think it's Roland or something along those lines. But I think Georgia is certainly searching for, and I know because Jed has mentioned this to me before, landing that one game-changing wide receiver is something that, even with Georgia's great recruiting prowess over the last 4 or 5 years, it's something that's kind of escaped them. So, it's no secret that they're going to be super hot on Wiley till the very end. I think
they are really looking for someone to come in, though, and contribute right away. From my understanding, they really need a impact or a transfer portal receiver next year. So I think that's where their main focus is.
So I think the important date to remember for now, Pat, is November 17th. That is the Tennessee-Georgia game. That is a game that Florida State is not playing that week. That's their 3rd bye week of the season. So I think all eyes and ears will be perked on whether Wiley makes a trip to Athens during that weekend. And of course, obviously, if he doesn't, if he could go there this weekend, if he doesn't show up for the UNC game and he goes, somewhere else, obviously, this is going to be one of those recruitments that, everybody and their mother is going to be coming after Wiley, and Florida State's going to have to hold on as best as they can.
Yeah. Hey, Fish, just a question for you. Obviously, we both agree that the bad season, whatever it turns out to be, is not going to totally be devastating to Florida State's recruiting class. I imagine they'll hold on to the vast majority of the 12 that they have. But what is kind of the feeling that you are hearing or getting from the coaches that you talk to at the high school level, and any kids that you're talking to at the high school level, about how they perceive Florida State as Florida State goes through this struggle?
Yeah, I think, there's fans who just think Florida State won't sign a single player. And then there's the reality that a lot of people, Norvell still has a ton of clout and respect by these coaches, and they like him as a coach. They like what he's done. So I think most feel like this is just a bad season. It happens in football. I think coaches understand things could go south, and it's a historically bad season, but they're also selling like, hey, listen, you have an opportunity to come in and play right away. Kids are always wanting that opportunity to have a chance to start or compete for a starting job as a freshman. So they're not lying when they say, hey, listen, you can come in here and play right away. And I think a lot of these guys will have a legit shot at getting on the field as freshmen. I think Byron Lewis is one of them. I think guys like Solomon Thomas is another. I mean, these guys are not going to have this opportunity at other schools that they will at Florida State next year.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you on Byron. I don't think Solomon can come in here and play right away. I mean, that's an offensive lineman. I mean, he's a great high school offensive lineman, but that's a lot, and I think that says. I mean, that would make him almost I'm not going to say generational offensive guard, but certainly would make him an elite prospect. Now he is physically developed beyond what most high school kids are, but dang, Fish, I'd love to see it because they need somebody that can block. They need somebody that can block.
I mean, LSU did it against Florida State, I believe, last year.
Will Campbell, yeah.
So, I mean, these guys have him highly rated. I agree. There's a transition from high school to it's one thing to be blocking Rebold high school guys and then going to play in the ACC. I get it. I've always said there's a tough transition, but Solomon's a confident kid. He's a bigger, more physical kid than most kids are his age. I think he's more further along than a lot of guys that are coming out of high school. And, he'll have a shot at least to be in the 2 deep as a freshman, I think. I definitely think he's someone that he may not start, but he's someone that could be in that rotation of 8 to 9 guys that Florida State rolls out there.
Well, as I'm looking at my center guard depth chart for next year, you could be right, Fish, as far as the 2, particularly as it pertains to the 2 deep. Because as I sit here and look at it, and there'll be some shifting, but you've got Ferguson, Estes early, Rizzi, Armello, and Otto right now that are your returning guards. I don't think all of them will return guards or centers. Let's just say you lose 2. You're right. He's in the 2 deep.
Well, also, does Early go outside? Because we've seen him both at tackle and guard this year as they've been shuffling the lines. So, I mean, that factors in as well. I think with as Otto continues to get reps and playing time this year, I think he'll improve and he should be in contention for one of the starting spots next year. Obviously, that's a long way away, but I think there is a reasonable chance that Solomon can come in and be a factor at least on the 2 deep in his first season, especially because he's getting here early.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see who ends up at center.
I think Otto's going to be the center. I mean, he's very similar to like a Cam Irvin type. He's big, long, athletic kid. He can move. When you start zone blocking, he could get to those second levels. I mean, he's raw, but I think he's the one guy. You and I have a lot of faith in him because of the character standpoint and how hard he's going to work. I'm sure he's going to watch film all off season and try to work on his craft.
Yeah, and listen, and I think, all right, so that if you go move Otto to center, Rizzi, Armella, Estes, and Ferguson. Now that's assuming that Daniels, Simmons, Early, and Hilton or TT stay at tackle, right? So yeah, that I think that he would be in line for some early playing time for sure. And I'm not sure. Estes has not gotten much of an opportunity to play on this offensive line, despite its massive struggles to block anybody. So I got to think he's leaving. Armella falls into the same boat. I don't know if he'll leave. He's got a leg. He's got a attachment to FSU, having been a legacy. So and he seems to love the program. I mean, he practices hard. Still does all those things. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. So you could be right. Now, Fish, I'm gonna continue a conversation we had as it pertains to recruiting last night, because as we discussed, I think the next 8 to 12 weeks will define Mike Norvell's long-term tenure at Florida State. You've got 5 games left in the season, 3 of them really tough. You got Miami this week. You got Notre Dame on the road, and then Florida turned out to be a little bit better than what we thought they were coming into the season, and they looked really good against Kentucky. There has a really good defense. Now it was hit or miss, 7-14 for something like 275 yards from DJ Lagway. I mean, it was really inefficient but effective. Then you've got December 4th, an early National Signing Day, and you've got the portal, which opens on December 8th and it closes, or December 9th and closes on the 28th or 29th. You got 20 days. We were talking last night about the fact that there's probably going to be some changes, particularly if this season continues to go south with the assistant coaches. How do you see that? When do you think, if Mike's going to make some changes on the staff because of recruiting, when do you see that happening? I told Jerry and the guys last night, I don't see a change being made until December 5th, the day after early National Signing Day. And he might feel like he needs some of these coaches to get him through the portal period. What do you think?
I think this weekend, the score can really dictate change. Like you see it with these other schools. If Florida State comes out and gets beat really bad against Miami, I really think you could see somebody let go by Monday. I really do. I just – there comes a – I've gotten some calls this week from a couple people I know that have donated money to Florida State, and I got to tell you, they're not happy. And I'm not – my stance was, hey, listen, let the season play out. Miami and Florida, the two programs, you always hear the same thing. Hey, you could lose to everybody. You could go, but if you go 2-10 and those 2 wins are against Miami and Florida State, fans will have a little more leeway. You come out and get blown out against Miami and you don't look good. I think Mike has to make a move. Just to get some of the heat off of him, I think he has to make a move make a move immediately.
Yeah, I get it. And listen, it's obviously becoming fashionable in football. We've seen Utah, their offensive coordinator resign yesterday. Andy Ludwig had been there 10 years. We saw Seth Luttrell get fired at Oklahoma. I know you know Seth Fish, and he recruits Florida, has for a long time, dating back to his time as an assistant at Indiana. And then today you saw Trickett get fired. I don't know where the hell Trickett's at, but he got fired.
He was at Coastal Carolina.
Wow. Fired your offensive coordinator at Coastal Carolina in the middle of the year. That's crazy. And Trickett, I would imagine he's a good coach. I know very little. My brother knows him very well. I don't know him as much. Do you think, and Nick mentioned it, I forgot they had a third open date on the schedule. Do you think he would wait till the open date to make that? I think he would wait till – Mike does not strike me as a guy that's going to fire somebody midseason.
I just think that this is a drastic – listen, there's losing and there's where Florida State's at now. And it all comes to that temperature in that room. You get people that are going to sit there and say, listen, you have to do – sometimes you have to feed – the masses some red meat, and if it's somebody on the staff, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying if Florida State comes out and gets blown out against Miami, I think it could get really ugly. Somebody's got to be sacrificed, and it's sad, but it's part of the business. These guys are paid a lot of money. You look at it. You brought up Trickett. Why would Coastal Care like it? Look, you look at the Jets.
Crazy.
You know, the Jets fired their coach, and they're 0-2, and they're worse.
Well, Aaron Rodgers fired the Jets coach.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying these changes, they don't make a difference. Like fans think, we'll make a change. But I believe if Florida State gets blown out against Miami, I think Monday you're going to see at least one new coach.
I guess my point is I think Mike's got a fine line to walk on this, because what if these recruits are attached to the assistant coach that's recruiting them, right? We know, all right, to use your example, and a guy that's under the gun is Alex Atkins. Offensive line's abysmal. If you're looking at guys that are probably nervous, and despite the fact that his contract runs through 2028, but my point is, I think there's got to be some thought in this, because you don't want to lose Solomon Thomas because you make a decision that doesn't need to be made until after the season. So I guess my point is I think they need to be careful with how they walk that tightrope. And listen, everybody's going to get their pound of flesh soon enough. Changes are coming. We all know that. It's the sad part of the business, but it's a realistic part of the business. If you're going to fire somebody after Miami, why don't you fire them after Clemson? I mean, you're talking about
or Memphis or Duke. You know, it's like I agree, and it's It's the way that, first of all, just Mike's personality of, I think he would give the staff the rest of the season, even if wholesale changes are made. But if Mike has shown a tremendous amount of patience in other facets of the team this year, in terms of things like putting Brock in, for example, or making changes to a more youth movement in terms of player personnel, like I just, even if Florida State gets trounced on Saturday, and they very well likely may, like I completely understand what you're saying, Fish. I just don't feel like that fits Mike. I don't feel like that fits.
Well,
Mike
listen, and I understand where you're coming to from, Fitz, because I've on our post game show, there's never been the outrage in the comment section that there was after the Duke game.
Listen,
I mean, they ratcheted up a ton.
Like I said, Florida State's never been in this situation since I've been alive. So trying to compare it to any other situation. Miami and Florida are two schools that you do not come out and just get pounded into the turf on a what? Like, I just think that outrage will get to such a high level that somebody's head's going to roll. And I don't think it will be Atkins, because one, they've already shown how horrible they are when he's not around. The guy that came in to coach for him, it was actually worse, whether you guys want to believe that or not. But I just think that there comes a point, like, this is the way the game is now. Somebody's got to pay the price. I think JP could chime in, but I do believe that if they go out and get beat 50-13 or something and it gets ugly.
Well, listen,
I think somebody's going to be on the chopping block come Monday.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have not seen the improvement that you're talking about from the offensive line since Alex has been. I mean, listen, he was missing 3 hours. He was missing game time. That's it. I mean, everybody acts like this was a big deal, and it wasn't. But they regressed. They regressed against Duke on the offensive line. That's what I don't understand. Where do people see this vast improvement? Over half of Brock Glenn's rushing yards the other day, or half of them, were scramble runs. You know how many yards after contact Cam Davis had in that game? 70. You know how many yards he ran for? 63. So how is the offensive line playing better under? Yeah, he lost yardage a couple of plays. JP, I saw the look on your face.
They don't do it that way. Well, I guess they do in the NFL.
Hey, it's the new math that they have in these school systems. Hey, by the way, welcome, JP.
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
A quick question before we go back to toxic.
I'm sorry, Matt Carruthers signed in before I did. He said content. Sorry, I'm here to drag it down, Matt, but we'll do my best.
Well, Matt, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate Rocky watching too. First of all, before we get back to Florida State and Toxic Tuesday instead of Takeaway Tuesday, what happened with the Bucks receiver last night? Not Davis.
Both Bucks receivers. They lost Mike Evans and Chris Godwin last night.
So not Evans, but Godwin. I heard you talking a little bit this morning about it on your show. And then I heard something. It sounds like it was a very bad injury.
Yeah, it's a dislocated ankle, maybe a fracture. We'll find out today. It's one of those where everybody sees it and they can't. They have to look away because
similar to Jordan Travis,
right? Yes, they should. Except the CW is The CW will show it over and over again, but it was one of those injuries that you don't show twice on TV.
Right. Yeah, it was
the
bad.
CW.
And there's a huge debate whether he should even have been in the game. I always marvel, honestly, at how Bowles especially keeps his starters into the end of the game, whether they're up 30 or down 30 or whatever. Normally they're close games, so it's never a deal. But, it's 41-18, at 6:43 left in the game, and you can't stop the other team. That's the key. You can't stop the other team. The game is over. The game is over. You cannot and it was a very physical game, and the Ravens were playing zone, and Hamilton's coming up and knocking the crap out of everybody, just lining people up. And I'm sitting there going, like, this is way before the injury happened. Why are these guys in the game? And they did get it, and they did get a onside kick, and they cut it to 10 with 1:48 to play. But again, you can't stop the other team. When they wanted to, all they had to do is hand the ball off. You're going to lose. Get the guys out of there. You got the Falcons coming up next week. It's a huge game. In the NFL, divisional games matter. They count for two, basically. So and with this particular division, you cannot lose two to the Falcons and think you're going to win the division. It's too hard to. So you had to get the guys out of the game. Bowles left them in. Godwin's out for the season. Evans is probably out for the next 4 weeks, and it's again, and this comes down to coaching, right? Coaching and organization. It all starts at the top. And I love Todd Bowles as a human, but his game management is awful. It's terrible. And Evans shouldn't have even played in this game, in my opinion. He was already nursing a hamstring. Then he hurts it on his first touchdown, and you're still throwing him out there, telling him to run go routes. I mean, you have to protect these players from themselves. They're all going to, of course, say, "I want to play. I want to go. I want to go." The coach is supposed to have the bigger program in mind, the bigger franchise in mind, and that didn't happen in this case. And it's certainly, the loss of the leadership at the top of Florida State is killing this program. It's absolutely killing it. And your discussion about coaches being fired is absolutely on point. But this team is so bad. I don't know who to agree with here, Pat. This team, the whole damn staff should be fired. Should be fired. You can't fire Mike, so he's the only one that stays. Everybody else should go. And there's a lot, and there's people on the staff that I've known a long, long time, and I think are awesome people, and I love them to death. But this is business. This is business.
I think they all, JP. I think you know this. I think they all understand. I can't imagine anybody's walking those halls feeling with their chest pumped out, like they're going to keep their job. This is a level Florida State's never been at.
Yeah, they understand what it's about. And it's about winning, and when you don't perform, you get fired. And they're all handsomely compensated. They'll be fired.
Yeah, that's not that's not how the conversation was. How does the timing of your firings impact recruiting? And that's where we were starting.
I think that's important. I think you make a great point, Pat. At this point, it's all about the rest of. It's not about this season. If you fire somebody thinking you're going to make a difference this season, it doesn't matter. The season is over. The only thing that matters with this season is developing players for next year and somehow trying to keep a recruiting class together. That's the only thing that's left for this season. So firing somebody, while it might, as you mentioned, Fish, give a little red meat to the fan base, it's pointless. It's pointless.
Well, because what you're doing is you're taking your frustration out on Mike on somebody else if you're a booster and that's what you want. I mean, listen, you started this season with them thinking they were good enough to coach this team. I'd let them finish out the season. I think you've got to – I don't think – Mike does not come across to me as a guy that's good. That can hurt your – as you getting fired in season as an assistant coach can be detrimental to your career. And I just don't think that they're going to do it. I don't think Mike's going to put one of his guys in that situation. I just don't. I think the changes are coming. We talked about that last night on the show. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and who. And I think my personal opinion is we won't see any of that. I think all that will take place between December 5th and December 29th. I think that's when that's going to, or somewhere between December 5th and December 31st is when I think that's going to happen. Let's talk a little bit about the football program. You mentioned the youth movement. We got to see 2 quarterbacks on Friday night against Florida State. I'll just give you my quick take. Obviously, Brock was a little bit shell-shocked in the first half, did not play particularly well. I don't think that I've ever seen a team or an individual player have 3 straight turnovers on 3 straight plays, and I've watched a lot of football. Now, I think 2 good things came out of this, that particular situation. I don't think we really need to rehash the game itself other than to say, as bad as Florida State played, they left 16 freaking points on the board outside of the pick 6.
Again.
They should have won that game. But long story short, we're 5 days removed from that game now. But I do want to talk about individuals. So we got to see Luke come in the game. Luke is a good athlete. We saw him put that great pass, stood in the pocket tall, delivered it to Kentron Portier. He's got to make that catch. But then right before the fourth quarter starts, you put Brock back in the game and have your best drive of the game. 9 plays, 59 yards, had a couple of really stupid penalties. But listen, I was really impressed with what little I saw from Luke. I think the game was moving faster for him than it was for Brock. And listen, both those cats were running for their lives when they passed. I mean, they couldn't block me or you or any of us on this freaking call. But I was really impressed with the way Brock reasserted himself once he got in the game.
Yeah,
I think that's something you can build off of. How do you guys see Mike utilizing the quarterbacks as you move forward into the last game of the season? Now, I don't think he's going to burn Luke's red shirt. There are people that think he's thinking that way, but if I'm Luke or his family, I don't want to burn a year unless Brock were to go down, right? What do you got? How do you think? And I'll start with you, JP. How do you think Mike uses the quarterbacks moving forward?
well, I think the argument about the red shirt may be settled depending on how they play. You know, you got 3 games, right? You can play in 4, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so you got 3 games to decide. You know, I mean, just what if, and I think this is a big what if based on what I saw, because I don't think Luke's ready to play, and he's been on campus for a year, and he's not ready to pull the trigger. That's a problem in coaching. I just don't think he's ready. But let's just say he came in and just lit it up and kind of established himself as the next guy. Then I would say let him play the rest of the season, because if he's good as a freshman, he ain't going to be here for 5 years. So, and I'm not going to, and he can get injured down the road. That will help. Then they're going to want to have the red shirt season, right? So I don't think it should be that much of an issue, and it should determine itself. If he's playing, if we see a lot of what we saw last game, yeah, maybe there's no need to play him in a 5th game. I think that's fine. You're like, okay, he needs a lot more work. Yeah. So we're make sure that he has that season. So I think his performance, will kind of determine where you should go with that. I think that's fair. And I think the same for Brock as well. And Brock, I thought played, yes, obviously much better. You know, those 3 turnovers, that's shell shock. And I think Mike did a good job of getting him out, letting him, calm down, watch what's going on. Good time to put Luke in, because can't get any worse. At that point, as we all said, it can't be any worse than DJU. Well, I guess we were wrong.
No, listen, I don't think any one of us could sit on here and say it would have been better if DJU had been in there. You don't get the runs.
Would have been better.
You don't get the quarterback runs if DJU's.
I know. Brock changed the game. He changed the numbers in the run game. That helped the run game. I don't know where Teofili was if he got hurt.
Well, that whole substitution pattern they got on just about every position is bad. He missed the entire middle of the game.
Why?
Yeah.
Based on what? Cam ripping off huge run?
That's something that you're doing if you're going to plan on playing 13, 14, 15 games. This team is not playing that many games this year, so I don't know why they're continuing to. And it confounds all logic too, because the rotation patterns just oftentimes just completely undermines the personnel that they need on the field. Case in point, I can't remember if that was I think it was the SMU game where they got Toafili as lead blocker on a QB draw on the inside. Like
Clemson, right? Or was it the game before that?
No, I'm pretty sure it was SMU. I don't know. These games are all blurring together.
It was SMU. You're right. It was SMU.
The two quarterback powers inside the 3 yard.
Well, listen, he's one of your
quarterback in the history of the game. Okay.
I don't understand why he's not playing every snap. I mean, listen, we watched Travis Hunter play 175 snaps a game at Colorado, and Florida State can't keep its best offensive player on the field for over half a game. I mean,
what was the explanation for that?
I don't know,
but I would not be surprised if like Toafili hasn't been bothered by something since the Georgia Tech BC game, something along those lines. I don't want to speak on anything because obviously we can't talk about injuries, but I mean, I would not be surprised if there's like something nagging him that they're trying to monitor. That's the only logical explanation that I could think of.
Listen, you got to play through injuries.
Of course.
Whatever. Yeah. If he's that hurt, don't play him at all.
Right.
I mean,
if he's going to start the game, then where did he go? Unless he got injured in the game. Yeah.
Listen, again, it does not make sense, and we go all the way back to the Georgia Tech game with the freaking running back substitution pattern, right? I mean, it's been an issue since then. I don't know who's controlling that on the sideline, whether it's David Johnson or Mike Norvell or a quality control assistant, but it's ridiculous. All right, so go back to the quarterback question. Fish, what are you doing if you're Mike Norvell with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I would stick to Glenn. I didn't see anything from Cromanhawk that, he's ready this year. He's further behind than I thought, and I put out my thoughts on the message board this week that I think they have to go find a transfer quarterback again. I hate to say it.
No.
I'm just telling you, I didn't see anything.
Why is he not ready to pull the trigger in a game?
Well, let me tell you what's going to happen. Let me tell you what's going to happen if they go get a transfer quarterback.
They'll leave soon.
Both those guys are going to leave.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, Mike doesn't have a choice. Like he's not winning 8 games with what I saw from Kromenhoek the other day. I mean, listen, you guys have seen quarterbacks head down when the rush is coming, not looking out. I mean, he is so far from playing. I never knew he was this far behind. Brock, they could win 8 games next year with him. But even what I said, the thing with both of these quarterbacks, and I think you could win with them, I don't think either of them have elite traits. I think that you have to put very good players around them, meaning you have to put a good O-line around them. You're going to have those tight ends more involved in the passing game next year. This is a team that you'll have to build players around those two for them to be successful, because I don't think they're going to go and make other guys better. I just don't.
Well, listen, I have said this since last December and last January. I've said it multiple times. With the way Florida State practices, your quarterbacks are not going to get better until they start going into games where they're facing live bullets, because Florida State does not play live football in practice outside of their scrimmages. And you're going to stunt those guys' development unless you're willing to say, hey, guys, we're going to do 10 minutes of 11 on 11, and everybody's liable to be hit. I mean, so that again, that is another philosophical thing where, and I'll be perfectly honest, I do not know all the rules and regulations on how many periods during a particular practice week that you can actually take people to the ground. It has changed a lot since I've been in football.
Pat, let me ask you guys a question. What did you see? And I know it was a small sample size. What did you see from Luke that you're like, all right, that guy next year?
It's his first game.
Yeah, I just think
it's too early. It's just too early for me.
I get it. I think he's going to be good. I do think he has the talent, but he is raw. I mean,
he got here in December.
Yeah, wait a second. This was a kid that everybody started saying he was a 5-star recruit. So let's Georgia.
Well, see, I heard he was a 5-star. Is he not a 5-star?
Yeah. Now he can't play.
To some services.
Now he can't. Listen, are you going to honestly say DJ Lagway hasn't played much? Are you really going to say right now you would take Kromenhoek going into next year over Lagway? No way.
Well, DJ's played a lot more. I mean, his first. I think DJ's first
Lagway's not playing Florida State.
Was it not?
Listen, there's a couple of things you have to take into account in your evaluation of these kids, as particularly the quarterbacks. The offensive line had both of those kids running for their life fish, and they can't run the ball.
What did I just say? They're going to have to build. So basically, they're going to have to go to the portal this year and go get 7 or 8 O linemen and hope that 3 or 4 of them really pan out, because they're all what are they magically going to snap their fingers, and these guys that can't block this year are going to be able to block next year? I mean,
well, half the guys that can't block this year are going to be gone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What does that tell you, though? They don't trust the guys behind them.
Listen, we all know that offensive linemen at any level of football take a while to develop. So, listen, they got some young kids. I think Lucas Simmons has got a chance to be a good player. I think Chris Otto's got a chance to be a good player. I think Jalen Early can be a good player.
And we got to see these guys play. I mean, they're just starting out their careers. So, again, these evaluations have to be ongoing. And if they're not going to get it in practice, these games are even more important to get these young kids in.
But you're all right. They're going to have to go to the portal big time, which is going to at just about every position.
Yeah.
Well, and let's just have this larger discussion now. If you're going to be a portal program, which is evidently what Florida State has become, then you better get used to these wild ups and downs of seasons, because you just either you hit on verse and everybody else and you have a good core to go with it, or you miss on everybody and have no core. And I think this is why Florida State is where it's at. Not only did they miss on almost every one of their portal guys, but they had no core to back it up. The core is gone.
Yeah.
So now you had you. This is why there's been such a precipitous drop. They were not coaching next year's team last year or the last 2 years. It was all in to win right now.
Yep.
The great programs stack them up. You guys know this. FSU used to do
Well,
this during the 14 years. I know the game is different. So, but you've got to. But this is what you've become. So, and how do you get out of it? You recruit your way out of it. You high school, you recruit your way out of it. And how's that going? Not so good.
Well, here's the other piece of that puzzle. All right, so that Mike will probably survive this year. We all think he will, right? Just financially,
it's a financial.
Financially, you can't do it.
And listen,
financial certainty.
Yeah, are there any other circumstances he probably doesn't survive what's going to turn into a 3-9 season? But he is going to go portal heavy because he's got to save his job.
Right.
So it's now whether he wants to be that heavily involved in the portal or not. But once he starts letting these coaches go, he's the next man up. And listen, if he was at Alabama or Tennessee or Florida or Miami or Texas or USC and they're 1-6, he's not coming back.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. With Mike, we all know what the financial certainty is. And I, as much as I hate to say this, but it is right now the way we feel. Mike has proven, we don't have that bad of memories, that he can take a dumpster fire and turn it into an undefeated team and go 19-0. He's proven that. That's fact. Whatever you want to think about Mike right now, that is a cold, hard fact. And whatever reasons you want to put into why that happened, how he did it, whatever. He was the head coach. He takes the blame. He gets the credit. You can't fire him this year and probably not next year. But you have, and this is going to sound weird and counterintuitive, you have to make him know that he has job security because he has to make choices that are not going to maybe help this program in the short term. To your point, Pat, you need to put more emphasis on high school recruiting and less in the portal. And that's counterintuitive to what he wants to do to save his job. Do you see where I'm going with this? You have to say, look, you have time. We're going to give you time to turn it around, but you better show freaking improvement next year and the year after. And you have to give me a plan that doesn't include turning over 40% of your roster every single year in the portal.
All right. Well, a couple of things there. A, if he will have a number he'll have to reach next year if this season goes 3-9, 2-10. Right? He'll have to show a certain level of improvement to come back.
You got to show improvement, right?
And here's the other thing. And all right, so we had this discussion last night. What is Mike's true potential as a long-term head coach at Florida State? All right, yes, he was 13-0. Can't take that away from him. He was 10-2, 10 and whatever the year before that.
10-3, yeah. But
he has been got outcoached by Jacksonville State in 2021, and he's 1-6 this year. So you can't make any decision if you're a power broker that's involved in this. You can't make it off the extremes. You can't because they're too wild. So, but you got to take the totality of what he has done into consideration. So, and to your point, with NIL and with the portal, college football programs better get used to the ups and downs, kind of like the NFL, where you're great one year, mid the next, and then bad one, then you build it back up.
That's
but
right.
And yes, Mike has shown that he can get this team to back on the national stage, but they have also shown where they can get out coached. All right, so
that's true.
It's somewhere in the middle, and I think I don't.
This redo, so to speak, this rebuild includes all new coaches. So you want to stop getting out coached, go get some good young coaches that are really, really good coaches, and get people that that have proven themselves on some level, and bring them in and pay them well and let him remake the entire staff and get an offensive coordinator, redo this entire offense, and Mike not calling the plays. I think these are major things that need to happen, and he needs to know he has the job security to make them happen, because it's going to this fix. While we love the fact that he turned it around so quickly, it was fool's gold. It was fool's gold. And it's because so much was wrapped into those players that left for the NFL in terms of leadership and talent. It was a bit of fool's gold. But Mike was the one who brought them here, so he gets credit for it.
JP, I listen, this year I just kind of want to forget what I look at with the coach, and you look at history. Mike won 10 games at Memphis in 2017. He went 12-1 in 2019. He's won 10-13 at Florida State. I don't think it's a fluke what he did the last 2 years. I think if you're going to compare him to somebody, compare him to someone like Brian Kelly, and I think it's the only situation that's similar. Notre Dame went 10-3 in 2015 and 4-8 in 2016. Whatever happened this year, the only people that know what truly happened are the people in that office, because this is unexplainable. I do not know what happened. I do believe he's a very good coach. I think next year they will turn it around. I think he's one of these coaches that I thought at worst each year. I thought Florida's floor with Mike Norvell, once I said the last 2 years, was 8 wins. So I do think that he will turn it around, and I think he'll get to 8 wins next year. But we don't know what that roster, that coaching staff is going to look like, and we're not going to know that till the end of November, early December.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, Fish. I think I don't know that 8. We'll see. I'm looking at the roster right now. I would suggest that everybody that don't look at the roster on the computer, take the time, write the position down, write the names down, and you tell me, based on this roster right now, whether they can get to 8 wins. Do it.
They got to go in the portal.
But if you told me, if I look at this roster, but I know I could pretty much guarantee that this roster is going to have 40 new players come December. Yeah. It's going to have 40 new players, and that's a minimum. They got to get to 105, and maybe they don't go to 105. Maybe they only go to 95, 100. There's going to be 40 kids. Listen, they are going to go into the portal. This is going to be the biggest portal class that FSU's had.
Yeah, well, it'll have to be because they're going to lose it. I would guarantee you they're going to lose more players in the portal this year than they have the last couple of years. And listen, I don't see how you just say, "Hey, I'm going to give them a pass on this year." I don't understand how you do that.
Pat, like I said, we're in a new age of college football, and I've said this on these message boards. Florida State just happened to be the first school that went 13-0 to what they're going to basically go 2-10 or. This is going to start to be the norm in college football. I'm just telling you, like
look at Michigan and Washington who played the title game. I mean, they're not Florida State, but they've dropped.
Listen, 2 teams that got killed by the portal. I know they're group of 5 teams, but App State and I believe Troy State are both were supposed to win their conference this year, play in the conference championships, and the portal decimated both teams. And you know what? They're having bad. I just think that fans are going to have to start adjusting to the new way that college football is. I'm not saying you're going to see teams go 13-0 and do what Florida State did, but I think you're going to see a lot of teams that are going to only win 5 or 6 games the following year.
Well, that's totally different than 1-6 and 1-7, and that's totally different. I mean, if I can of course see Troy going from 8 wins to 2 wins. But it's Troy. This is Florida State.
Pat,
what are we talking about?
When you talk about a roster of 40, 50 kids that didn't come through your program, did not play together, and they start losing, they're going to start making business decisions and basically quit. That when you go to the portal, that is part of the decision. This year is a portal team that basically you got what you deserve because you took so many of these portal kids. And the ironic thing or the crazy thing, hypocritical thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go back and do the same thing. It's crazy. But that's what they're going to have to roll the dice on. This is what happens when you recruit kids that quit and let's call it what it is. They've quit. Most of these kids quit other programs, and you're taking kids that quit, period. It didn't go their way, and they moved on. And this is
listen, the portal's not going to be any different than that.
They're NFL free agents for a reason.
Yeah.
The portal's not going to be any different than that next year.
It's exciting. Well, to me, it's exciting. You got a chance to rebuild quickly.
Exactly.
Now, go make some good choices. Go get some coaches that can evaluate talent. That's a huge – we never talk about your coaching staff is not only developing, they're also evaluating the talent on who you're going to recruit, which may be the biggest decisions that are ever made. Hey. And clearly FSU has made some really bad decisions in those areas. You got to evaluate the talent based on what you see, the coaches and what they see, not based on any list. And and clearly,
Yeah, well,
just in the wide receiver core.
But
there's
they've
also
recruited
the
a lot
matter
guys
of
that can run but can't catch. That's a problem.
But JP, all right, you take Alabama. They had 2 receivers last year that hit the portal, and FSU could have recruited both of them. They recruited Benson, who was a JUCO failure at Alabama that never got on the field, who was a bust. Or there was Ja'Cory Brooks, who played in the national title game as a freshman, who was from Booker T, Miami, and they didn't go after him. That is their choice that they made.
Right.
And that's why you don't have a receiver. And that kid's got 700 yards at Louisville this year.
Yep.
That you can't make those bad of a decisions.
And that's where a lot of this lies. They've made a lot of poor decisions based on their evaluations, and it's so important. It's so important. Just getting guys, is not. That's always you got to get them right, but you got to get the right ones, and you got to get the right ones in the portal.
Well, exactly. There's also the matter of this new coaching staff that is going to be coming in. No matter how many, whether it's 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 4 guys, they're going to have a different idea of what they want their respective rooms to look like.
Right.
So there's also, you talk about the excitement of potentially flipping a roster. There's also the excitement of evaluating different types of guys that you may potentially want to bring in.
Yeah,
Taking Benson and then seeing Ja'Cory Brooks go off for 700, 800 yards at Louisville, who knows exactly why Florida State didn't go after him, whether it was a financial thing, whether maybe they just thought, maybe they had the ego of saying, we could fix that guy. We could bring him on and he could contribute immediately. I don't know, but there is the potential that comes with, and I'm not necessarily as optimistic that they can do it in the portal. I don't expect a 180 turnaround. I think this roster is too underperforming, and I just think that the way that the people that more programs are attacking the portal now, I don't think that turnaround is possible. But there is the opportunity for better coaches to come in and have a better idea of what they're looking for, be better evaluators than what they were this past offseason. Because look, it's the product is on the field. Who they brought in this past year is just not good enough, especially compared to some of the other talent like Kyle Kennard that they got on campus and passed on. And I'm not saying he would have flipped the defensive end room here at Florida State this season, but he's being very productive at South Carolina. So that's one part to the big shell, to the nut that we're discussing. So.
Well, and there's an opportunity for rapid improvement, as there is for rapid decline.
Attrition for this roster. We haven't even started talking about attrition for this roster. But, listen, I just think when you look at the whole picture, I think you got to look at the whole picture. It seems like for whatever, this is kind of like the pass that the New York media they get every player that comes through New York, baseball, basketball, football, hell, except for Aaron Rodgers. He gets a free pass. Now what we're doing at Florida State is we've already said today we're going to just go ahead and throw this year out because it's an aberration. Well, is it? Is it really? 5-7 the second year losing to Jacksonville State? Listen, it's incredibly hard to go 13-0. You know what? It's also incredibly hard to do at Florida State. Go 1-7.
Yeah.
So we're just going to start throwing. Let's throw out the freaking bowl game because our players quit.
Nobody's throwing it out, Pat. Everybody, in fact, we're changing the entire coaching staff except the head guy because you can't. I don't think anybody's saying this is we're just going to give them a pass. No, they're paying with their jobs, all of them, everybody. So there's no pass given out.
There's certainly some level of flukiness to it, but there's certainly like the other side of it saying like this team is 1-7 and everything that is being said about the staff is deserved. All of them deserve to be fired this year for the product that's on the field here at Florida State. 1-6, 1-7 is unacceptable for this program, especially coming off a 13-1 season. Regardless of the modernity of the way that the sport is now with the transfer portal and the level of recruiting and everything. But I can see where, from Fish's perspective, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, there is some level of flukiness I feel to it, and to some degree, like there's Murphy's Law, the injuries piling up that are happening that Mike has said, the drops. There are some things that, there's plenty of blame to go around with this staff. There are some things that are certainly fluky, which maybe you want to give a pass for.
All part of the
but a couple things, and let me jump in real quick. Is one, I don't believe this team, as bad as they are, is 1-6 talent bad. Like I still think that there's enough talent.
Which
That's
makes
why I
it
said,
that much worse.
all right, yeah, but that's why a lot of these coaches are going to be gone. All right, a lot of them are gone.
Yeah.
Listen, there's people that think this is 2 or 3 coaches going. I don't believe that. I think you're going to have half the staff gone. 2, I think that the coaches you bring in, they're going to do kind of like what Indiana did. Indiana, most of that team, their transfers are from James Madison. Those guys know that system. I think the coaches they bring in are going to have to bring guys in. That's going to be part of the deal of them getting jobs, that they bring guys in that can help improve the roster.
Yes.
So if you're
Absolutely.
a linebacker coach, hey, you better bring in 2 of your guys from the school. All right. You know, there's a guy at Arkansas that people talk about. You bring in Tavion Wallace. You bring in, he's got a kid from Graceville down the street from Tallahassee. He brings him in. All of a sudden, the linebacker position's better. It's better. So
Absolutely.
you got to look at the whole picture that it is, listen, I'm one of the most critical people, Pat, and negative with a lot of stuff, but I still believe deep down that Norvell's a very good coach, and if he makes the right moves, they could turn this around next year. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. I'm saying you could turn it around and be a lot better next year.
I think he can turn it around. I just think it's going to take more than 1 year.
Here's
All right,
a
guys,
question
I got to get out of here because I got my 11 and under basketball team. I got to go coach.
Yeah,
Here's my new roster.
you better.
I got to
win.
tell you, I'm getting in the portal because this kid, Joey Johnson, whatever his name is, 4'2", 38 pounds. Sorry, pal, you're gone. You're already cut.
You got your own version of Spud Webb there.
4-2.
Size matters, kid. You're gone. So I got to go.
All right,
I'll back on my roster next week.
When
to
will I
how-
see you
how
again?
many kids
Thursday or
survive.
Friday? Thursday.
Whatever day works for you. But do we have to talk about FSU Miami? Do we have to?
We'll talk about Miami.
All right, Thursday. We'll do it Thursday if that works for you.
Have
So
fun.
as
Have fun.
JP departs here, I want to ask this question here because it's an angle to this that I don't think anybody else is talking about yet. What is your guys' confidence level in Mike's hiring ability for assistants? Because we have seen Patrick Surtain come in here and do a pretty good job for what it's worth with what he's been given and who he's brought in, because I think Fish makes a good point here. It's not just about who you're bringing in, it's about who he could potentially bring with him. So Surtain has come in. He's looked like a good hire from the year and a half, 2 years that he's been here. What is your confidence level in Mike finding the right people to bring in?
Go ahead, Fish.
I feel very confident. One, going to the coaching convention like I do every year, he attracts a lot of people around him. I've told this story about on the Message Sports how Brennan Marion and him were chopping up football with 3 or 4 other guys that were big time coaches. I think Mike has the ability to attract bigger coaches. It's going to come down to one, them giving the money, which Florida State's going to have to give, and giving 3-year deals, guaranteed deals. And listen, a lot of guys, and Pat will tell you this, a lot of guys will be willing to come here with a 3-year guarantee, even with the money. So
yeah, I think. Listen, I think that the fact that Mike has done it once does help him attract coaches because there's going to be questions, right? You know, coach, how many years you really got to get this thing turned around? You know, what have they told you? Do you have 1 year? Do you have 2 years? And there'll be some open conversations, I'm sure, like that. Now, listen, I do think Florida State's brand helps you because one thing we do know is that most coaches think that they put the air in their first football, and they think that, hey, I get that Florida State logo on my chest, boy, I'm unstoppable, right? I mean, assistant coaches, head coaches, they all do. And there's a lot of weight that comes with that Seminole logo on your chest. And I think that a lot of people think they can come in here and help Mike win. Now, listen, I'm not as concerned as you guys are about who a potential coach brings with him. I'm more worried about the long-term stability of the program. And if you're making the decision solely to bring an assistant coach in based on who he can bring, well, that might work for a year. That might work for 2 years, but you're right back to where you started because he's not going to build any new relationships outside of your program with other kids. So I think if to use your example, Fish, if it was the guy from Arkansas for whatever reason, there was a defensive opening and that was the guy that replaced him. Does he bring Tavion? Does he bring a linebacker with him? Well, if he's good enough to play at Florida State, hopefully that's the case. But I don't think if you're Mike Norvell, you can make a decision on who you're going to bring in as an assistant coach based off the players they're going to bring with them from their current school. And I think that is a short-term philosophy, but but if the guy can only coach because of those players, then you're bringing in the wrong guy. So
it's not the determining factor, but it's a part of it. Like, I think the ability to evaluate, and obviously the coaching ability on the sidelines, the ability to connect with kids, I think is the most important thing here. Because I think something that you've been saying for a couple of weeks now, Pat, is becoming more and more true. It's that whatever they're saying to these kids, the assistant coaches, it's not connecting. Whatever the difference is between, if it's either personnel or the way they're the way that they're actually going in and teaching these kids, the way that they are teaching and coaching last year's team is not translated over to this year's team. So
yeah,
they need to find people, and of course, you almost got to, like, an extra basket of fries, like with your burger meal or whatever, like whoever people might bring, like that's extra. If you don't find somebody that is going to be able to reach these kids and reach this locker room, no matter how much turnover there is, there's going to be problems, and Mike is not going to be here in two years, let's say.
Yeah, and that's why I think listen, if you get the players that come along with that coach, that's great. But at the end of the day, it needs to be about, is he the best guy to develop that position and be the guy that is the voice in that room? And I think and listen, I agree with Fish. Mike knows guys from everywhere. He's coached at Arizona State. He's coached at Memphis. He's got a guy that used to be the head coach at Southern Miss that's now looking for a job. I don't know what position he coached for Mike at Memphis, but Will Hall did coach for Mike at Memphis, I believe. I could be wrong, or maybe at Arizona State they were together, but I do believe Will Hall and Mike were together somewhere along the way. If I remember our working that game last year, their paths have crossed. And then, of course, everybody keeps on bringing up the guy from, I know, Fish, you mentioned the guy from UNLV. That guy's probably going to be a hot commodity this year. And I agree with you, Daily Chop. You either coach it or allow it to happen. I wrote about that today a tremendous amount. And no, I didn't say Will Hall was the answer. We're speaking in hypotheticals. You guys hear what you want to hear. That's fine. I mean, I appreciate you listening, but no, that's not what I was saying. I was saying that there's some guys that know Mike, that have worked with Mike before. Obviously another guy that he's worked with that is at Oklahoma now as an analyst and is now the quarterback coach, Kevin Johns, who did really well with Mike Elko at Duke and was Mike's offensive coordinator his last year at Memphis, and Mike did not bring him with him. He stayed with Ryan Silverfield, and I've known KJ for a long, long time. He's a really good coach and really good man. But listen, the problem is we don't know what jobs are going to be open. So we are spitballing about who he could bring in, but those are guys that Mike has relationships with. And I think you'll see him probably go back to – listen, Mike's got to trust these guys, right? So he's either got to know them personally, know what they're about, or he's got to have a recommendation from somebody that he trusts that says, hey, this is the guy to get it. So it's a nuanced conversation. It's just not let's put a round peg in a square hole. Mike's got to – Fish. Mike's got to figure out who he trusts, who he can turn around.
I mean, should I give my number out on this podcast? Because I got plenty of coaches that I can recommend.
Just text Mike directly. Just text
one
Mike
starts with a K and the other one has a P.
Well, yeah, we'll see about that one. We'll see about that one. But I got a guy who should probably go higher. I know a guy, pretty damn good defensive line coach, defensive end coach, and coach outside line.
Starts with an S and ends with a B.
That's right. But yeah, listen, it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. I mean, but Yeah,
Mike's favorite word the past few weeks is evaluating all things, and he's certainly going to be doing an evaluating of a lot of things. When
well, you know what? I went out to practice to evaluate some things too yesterday, and I saw some guys pitching harder than they had in my previous stop at practice, so that was good. And by the way, I evaluated Mike last night on his call-in show. Did y'all happen to watch that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, but I saw what you said in the staff chat. He apparently was not himself. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, listen, when they went to the first commercial break, I don't know if he knew the camera was still on him, but he was staring right through the fans that were there. He did not seem to be very engaged, and I think you got to know you're in front of there's the people drive down there to see him. He doesn't need to stare him down.
He might still be fighting something. I think he was. I mean, Mike's a pretty hoarse guy because he can yell, but I think he was dealing with something sickness, illness wise a couple weeks ago, and he didn't particularly sound that great when we were talking to him after practice today. So maybe he was under the weather. I don't want to make excuses for him. Shoot, after the season that this team has had, I wouldn't blame him one bit for having the 1,000-yard stare.
But what do you guys want him to come out and say? Hey, man, I've done a SHA.
It was just the prep. No, he's in front of fans, Fish, and part of your job as a head coach is when you go into situations to be engaged and welcoming, and his body language did not show that. I understand he's pissed off about what's going on this season, but he's in front of the people that are making his future possible. You cannot sit there and have a blank stare into space right past your fan base. That's all I'm saying. Listen, I understand why he's pissed. I understand why he's pissed. We got one question. What do you think about the strength and conditioning staff? I think they're fine. I think they need to quit flexing on the sideline.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. It's the one part of the team I think needs to be totally gutted and bring in a new strength coach. I don't know the guy personally. I have nothing against him. I think Florida State looks like the smallest team on the field every week when I watch them. Maybe it's guys they're recruiting. The guys just watching Brian Estes, who's been here 4 years, look like a guy that just got on campus 3 weeks ago, is kind of disappointing. I just want to see guys that go out there that look like they belong at Florida State.
Listen, he just does not have as big a middle section as the rest of the guys on the offensive line.
Yeah,
he's actually a strong kid.
All linemen aren't supposed to look anorexic.
Well, hell, they're not going to play him anyway. So they're not going to play him anyway. So why does it matter? I mean, he and Armella are the only two guys that can't get a snap.
Yeah. Armella must have done something wrong.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings on the strength and conditioning staff because look, I've never played football like a serious level. I don't know what goes into the strength and conditioning and just the preparation part. I don't know enough about what Storms and the staff are doing in comparison to another staff that's been here. So I mean,
the one thing Pat will tell you, the strength coach isn't just a strength coach. They're kind of also best friend, also psychiatrist to the they have a bigger role than just being a strength coach because they are around them when other coaches.
That's so. Yeah, of course.
So there is a part of how they're relating to those players as well, and maybe there's just a disconnect. I don't know, but Pat will tell you there's more than just going and lifting weights with the strength coach. They're not just.
Oh yeah, they're part psychologists.
Yeah.
I mean, half of them are crazy.
Yeah.
Listen.
There's one at Duke I would go after. I'll put it
Dave
that way.
Feely. Feely is Feely. I told somebody the other day when I interviewed at Ball State with Pete Limbo for a football operations job about 8 or 9 years ago. Dave was one of the guys that entertained me. You know, they had a bunch of coaches that took me out for lunch and dinner and showed me Muncie, Indiana, which takes about 15 seconds.
That sounds like a great college town, Pat.
But Dave used to be an old. If you want to get me into a history lesson, it used to be an old automotive parts manufacturing town, and once the automotive industry left America and moved to the other side of the pond, that town kind of shut down. So it was and I'm sure it's changed a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if this is getting way overblown, Alex. I mean, he's talking to an opposing player who did not know where he was on the field, was trying to make a play on the ball. This guy's 30 or 40 years old, and he's talking to the player and then flexing. Maybe they have a past relationship, but when you're 1-6 and you're a strength coach on a team that does not show much physical or mental toughness, you don't flex.
No.
So I don't think anybody's making a bigger deal. I think why do strength coaches need to be the center of attention on the sideline?
They don't.
Just help the guy back on the field and just keep your mouth shut. Strength coaches do not have a role once the game starts. They inject themselves into the action all over college football. Why? I would like to know why you think it's all right for a grown man to try to show he's a tough guy that he's not playing to a college kid that's on the field busting his ass. It's not a huge deal, but it is a deal, and it's the optics of it are awful when you're a 1-7 football team.
It's optically not ideal. I want to go back to like the relationship side of the strength and conditioning because, and granted, we're not in the locker room, so and what we see presented to us could be, I don't want to say doctored, but let's say cherry picked in terms of everything that we saw last year with all, let's say, the cinematic recaps. And I know, Pat, you're a big fan of those. You're asking why they went away on the Twitter machine.
Well, that's because I got asked that question. It was a legitimate question because they did one after Georgia Tech and did one after Cal, and there's no more. And I think people like behind the scenes no matter what's going on.
I think we all know what's going on behind the scenes with that locker room right now. No, so when it seems, generally speaking, that Storms is really, really well liked by the players, and that was last year's team, and this is this year's team. But I'm curious about.
Coach ain't gonna be. The strength coach isn't supposed to be really well liked. You know, they're supposed to be kind of hated, to be honest with you.
Well, which one is during the workouts? You're right about that.
Hated during the workouts, but if they're hated during the workouts, and they're psychiatrists from 6 to 9 p.m. and they're supposed to have a decent relationship, I don't know. Look, I like I said, I could go either way on the strength and conditioning. I think the staff needs to have changes across the board. It depends on. There's a lot of factors, and maybe it is just the type of kids that they've brought in that are smaller kids, but who knows?
Yeah. And Alex, to your other point, the combine, yes, words that Mike is probably going to regret at some point. He said it right before the season started. This is the biggest, fastest, most explosive team I've ever had at Florida State. So, yes, the combine testing went really well. If you're talking about FSU's combine testing, if you're talking about the NFL guys, the guys that went to the NFL and trained, it went well, but not all of them were training with FSU coaches by the time when they left here in December. They were going to other places to train. So, certainly FSU staff gets partial credit for that, but a lot of these guys were hiring personal trainers at that point. But to the more point specific to Florida State's football team, coming into the season, Mike felt like he had his strongest, fastest, most explosive football team based on all the catapult testing and all the stuff that they do with their analytics from a workout standpoint. So that part is true. Now, I assume that most of the guys did well. We have 10 guys that get drafted from Florida State last year. So obviously the combine went well for them. But I think I'm not worried about the guys that left. I'm worried about the guys that are here. Anyway, all right, guys. Yeah. What do y'all think? You think we've done enough Toxic Tuesday?
Yeah. Well, take it easy.
You need a bit of a flush. I think.
I thought we were going to be on here for about 30 minutes, and we'd be off. But listen, I did.
Oh, you know that's never how it works. Never how it works with us.
Like I said, but before we got on here, my brain was over after reading or writing Takeaway Tuesday. I was done.
Yeah.
And we went down this staff rabbit hole last night, and I told you guys we'd replay it this week or today because I wanted to get your opinions. Now it was more tied to how do you handle any changes that were coming. Is it tied to recruiting? But it turned into something, and that's fine. We all love talking football, and we'll be back Thursday. Typically, we do an opposing writer from the other rival site that Florida State's going to play. I don't think we're going to do that this week. I think it's going to be our group previewing Florida State, Miami. I'm hoping Fish and Nick can join us as well as Mark Salva, and we'll talk a little bit more Florida State, Miami on Thursday. But please go check out the Osceola. If you're not a subscriber to the Osceola, you can go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. Jerry's got his column up. Jerry Cutt's our publisher. There's a process for evaluating and changing football coaches. He digs a little bit deeper into Mike's situation along with the situation of the assistants and how those things could play out this offseason. Kurt just got his article up on Mike Norvell hopes Miami Week brings out the best in his football team. I transcribed Mario's interview yesterday, and that's up on the site where he talks a little bit about this FSU game and the rivalry. I know Nick's got some stuff up on the board about Florida State commitments who will be attending the Miami game this weekend. And then, of course, we've got Seminole Sidelines from last night up on the site. And if you're talking about staying in town, Tallahassee for the game, the Osceola will be having a watch party at Glory Days on Capitol Circle Northeast. If you're also a subscriber or want to be a subscriber, just want to come chat and talk football, that is, we welcome you there. And Alex, as I wrote today, I hope there is more to that story as far as maybe those two guys, the coach and the player, have a backstory to that. I really hope indeed that was the case. I'll be happy to ask Ira the next time I see him. But please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check our coverage out. Then, of course, we do Seminole Sidelines every Monday at 6, every Tuesday at 3, every Thursday at 3, and then have our instant reaction show about 15 minutes after every game FSU plays. And so we will be on air probably around 10:30 on Saturday night. Mark Salvo will join me. Fish joins us about half the time on the post game, so please join us for that. But thanks for tuning in, and Nick and Fish, I appreciate the conversation as always. Love talking college football with you guys.
Take it easy, man.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to
All right, guys.
Bye.